Oh, the humanity. For the F1 news cycle never sleeps. It's chaos. This morning, we're going to have to talk about Stroll versus Alonso. We've got to talk about Hamilton and Stroll during the press conference being so laissez-faire and disrespectful to journos. We're going to have to talk about Arrow's McLaren and Junico Hollinger, or whatever they're called. We're going to have to talk about rules and regs. Sainz not necessarily being locked in. And of course, Charles Leclerc being upbeat about his chances of dethroning one Maximilian Verstappen. Let's talk rules and regulations first, because apparently today was quite chaotic per one Dr. Obbs, friend of the channel, who says that the technical consultants at each and every single one of the teams were not consulted by the FIA. Oh, the humanity. But what would we expect? This is the FIA, the regulatory body of Formula One, no less. I mean, consulting, transparency, being open and honest and fair. This is not something that we expect from the FIA at this point. Behave yourself. A Mohammed Ben Sulayem led FIA. Behave yourself. But the crux of the discontent of the Formula One teams currently on the grid is that they haven't been consulted around this active aero stuff. The drivers do not like it. There are questions around how you will control it. The drivers activate it. Who switches it off? When do they switch it off? All of these new rules and regs for 2026 indeed feel half-baked. What are we doing? DRS is no longer, so too ground effect, or to an extent at least. But what does it all mean for the speed of the cars? Because ultimately that's why some of us are watching in 2024. Make these cars a lot slower. Then how does that translate to our viewing experience? They need to be quick. There needs to be risk. You can't overly sanitize Formula One, can you? What's going on? What are they doing? But again, the FIA have done, for the avoidance of doubt, what the FIA are doing, fail to consult the bloody teams, of course. The technical consultants of each and every single one of the team want to meet with the FIA to discuss what this looks like in kind as at 2026. And two, the drivers have piped up, for they are none too pleased either. Fernando Alonso says, I think it's impossible to achieve the 30 kilogram weight drop already. If the power unit is 50% electrical and you need the batteries to support that, cars will increase 20 or 30 kilograms just because of that. And Fernando Alonso makes the right case, doesn't he, Jay? Surely, Jay, if you're going to do all this electrification stuff and the batteries are indeed heavy, then where's this weight saving stuff going to come from? You guys told me. El Plan Alonso continues, and I quote, and then you want to reduce 30 kilograms, you need to drop 60 kilos of the current car, which is the same at the moment. Probably to the teams, it's an impossible target. The FIA are talking out of their you-know-whats, aren't they? It's all well and good, pipe dreams in a vacuum, but how? How are you going to get this over the line? Theory is fantastic, but it's poor if it doesn't affect in practice. They have 2 years to achieve that target, continues Alonso. And as always in Formula, what is impossible in 2024 will become reality in 2026, because there are very clever people in the teams, but I think all is a consequence of something else that's happening in the cars. Fernando Alonso, the cut of his jib isn't overly positive, true or false. Lewis Hamilton too. Says of the 2026 regulations per BBC, I've spoken to some of the drivers who have driven it on the simulator and they've said it's pretty slow. So we'll see whether that's the right direction for us or not. Again, not overly positive is the man from Stevenage. Alex Albon too, similar tone. Says the cars look very slow. What we want though, what I'd prefer, says Alex Albon, the Anglo tie, is simpler engines. Bring back bloody V10s for Pete's sake. Why don't we do that? Why don't we do that? Well, we won't do that because the FIA never listen to us, do they? Never listen to us, never listen to the fans. As far as related parties and key stakeholders, fans are always last on the list of things to do. In the press conference, it got awfully techie. I love me a good press conference, But this one got a bit techie for a couple of different reasons. First and foremost, around Checo. Checo was asked the question, around your contract extension, Checo, there have been reactions, people online most notably, saying that you only got a 2-year extension to keep Maximilian Verstappen happy. Checo Perez, says Crofty of Sky Sports F1. To that, sir, you respond, how? And Checo's response was interesting. I'm going to read it out verbatim because it's techie, this one. And you guys will have some things to say. Checo Perez responded, see, for me, all I need to do is close the visor and focus on my job. When my career is finished, this is the only thing that matters to me, my performance. Everyone, as it happens, continues Checo, has an opinion, but I am happy with what I have achieved thus far. That, ladies and gents, Jay, Leroy, that is techie. Checo Perez saying on the back of the most recent races that he's happy with what he's achieved. Now, is that indicative of a recalibration of his expectations? You remember a couple of years ago, he fell into this expectation trap where each and every single time he was asked, he said he wanted to beat Maximilian Verstappen and win championships. Is this Checo Perez demoting himself then, therefore, to de facto number 2 Red Bull driver? Is this him being realistic and pragmatic, maybe? And I suppose, you know what, I'm not sure that's not a great thing for Checo, to focus on each and every single session rather than trying to do the impossible and beat his teammate Maximilian Verstappen. Though this is what I've been asking from Checo for the longest time, that sort of rhetoric, to be realistic, no smart in his objectives. But he continues, and it only gets techier, ladies and gents, much techier. Because he was asked about the contract agreement and the negotiations. How were the negotiations, Checo? And Checo responded thus, which is interesting. Red Bull, he says, is a team that takes everything out of you. How intense it is both on and off track. You don't have this with any other team. What? What are you saying, Checo? How is that the answer to that question? He had something to say, didn't he? And again, many have speculated that the reason why Checo Perez got a 2-year extension at the ripe old age of 34, notwithstanding his most recent underperformance, is of course due to his off-the-track activities. This isn't me being salacious. This is me talking about his loyalty to Christian Horner in his most needy moment. There are 2 Red Bull drivers currently driving that car, only one of which supported their team principle in a way that was unequivocal, verbally in front of the world's press and media. That driver has a name. His name is Sergio Checo Perez. Because of the aforementioned, that fella, loyalty, granted that fella a 2-year extension on his contract. That's my story and I'm sticking to it. Rumour and speculation, of course, but sometimes you've got to go behind, peel back the F1 curtain and connect some dots. Mention her name's Apafania, although that's not what I'm doing here, I don't think. Checo Perez continued. I was always in contact with other teams just in case, but staying at Red Bull was my plan A, B and C. I give my best to this team to the last lap. Bloody Nora, this is chaos. What a chaotic driver press conference here. By the way, difficult to drive and slow opposites. It's a good shout, Jay. That car is difficult to drive at the moment. We're going to see exactly how difficult that car is to drive at the Canadian Grand Prix this weekend at Montreal. And I cannot wait. Other thing to note at that press conference, which I wasn't too happy about. You know, I like a moan and to go scorched earth just a little bit. Look, at that press conference, each and every single time at that press conference, I don't know why the drivers... In fact, let me frame it this way. Let me put some respect on Oscar Piastri's name. He was the one driver at that press conference who wasn't talking through all the bloody questions, who didn't have airs and wasn't hyped up in his own delusions of grandeur as a big F1, a multi-million F1 driver. He sat there on his ones with his McLaren cap on and listened to the bloody questions. Wasn't talking while journos were talking like the rest of them. He's just an F1 driver, not caught up in the extracurricular activities and the bloody I don't know. He just respect is what Oscar Piastri smacked of. In stark contrast, let me talk to Lance Stroll first and foremost. Lance, I know you're doing bits at the moment, chap. Yeah, you're level head-to-head with Fernando Alonso. It's 4-4 in qualifying terms. Props, mate. You've been doing well. You're 3 and zip in the last 3. And that's the worthy of credit, Lance. Like, do you know what I mean? You've been through some hard times, pushing your PT last year and whatever. That you are level head-to-head in qualifying as versus Fernando Alonso, who is God tier and has always been, is absolutely worthy of mention. Commendable, Lance Stroll, props. But then when you get to the press conference, mate, why have you got this laissez-faire attitude, Lance Stroll? Likeability is not something you can trade in, sir. Your attitude stinks, chap. I can't even watch the press conference when Lance Stroll is in there just doing his Kevin and Perry thing. He's slumped over in his chair and he's got this attitude that stinks, and like the way that he answers the questions is rude and curt, and I just don't like it, man. These drivers, Lance, you are one of 20, chap. There are millions of people around the world who would kill to be in your position. Don't even talk about the position of privilege that you find yourself in, having a million/billionaire daddy in Lawrence Stroll, who owns the bloody team for which you drive. That's another conversation for another day. But your attitude and your demeanour at the press conference, doing the thing that you love, that so many people would kill to do, be an F1 driver for Pete's sake, is ridiculous. I just turned off from that chap, and I really want to get behind him, right? You heard me talking about his performance in absolute terms, 4-4 versus Fernando Alonso, but do you know what I mean? Sadly for Lance Stroll, and this is where I've got to pick holes in his demeanour and his attitude, that laissez-faire stuff that he's dealing with at the press conference. Sadly for Lance Stroll, he's getting above his station as far as his demeanour. Delusions of grandeur, because whilst the qualifying record versus his teammate is absolutely worthy of mention, sadly for him, you don't win any points in qualifying. The racing record head-to-head versus his teammate Fernando Alonso is 6-2. 6-2, Lance. So why all the big bloody attitude? Where's that coming from? You're talking about unbeaten Alonso, and that's worthy of mention. You're throwing out all these sound bites like you're doing bits. Yeah, you are doing bits, but come on, chap. Lance Stroll says, when I look at the pace and speed right now against Fernando, he's a 2-time world champion and people see him as a top driver in Formula 1. It's 4-4 in qualifying. I beat him the last few weekends, so take it as you want. Well, slow your roll there, Lance Stroll. Just ever so slightly, mate. Just a tad. Let's chill out. Like I said, you don't win any points for qualifying. Let's be more consistent, chap, and save me with that attitude. And I got to take aim at Lewis again. I'll never hear me on this channel ever again sacrificing objective truth at the altar of partisanship. And I got to take aim at Lewis Hamilton as far as the bloody rudeness and the gossiping during the press conference when paid journos have flown all the way out to Montreal from wherever in the world, France, UK, United States, to ask you like questions, to give this sport more cachet, more publicity, to try and get it over in the mainstream, as Drive to Survive has done so brilliantly before. So look at this now, check this out. So how does it work that a journo is asking Lewis Hamilton a question about performance and what have you guys brought as far as the upgrade, and Lewis is out there talking to bloody Hulkenberg or whoever. What? The journo had to stop mid-question to wait for Lewis to stop talking. I was like, no, I can't. Love me some Lewis Hamilton. Do not get that twisted. Do not like that from him at the press conference. Especially when he does so much to try and foster rapport, always takes the mic and before he just answers the question, addresses all the journos and says, firstly, hello, like tries to be nice and polite and kind as he normally is. That's Lewis Hamilton, right? Very PC savvy or PR savvy for the most part. But then when the journo is asking him the question, why does the journo have to wait for you to stop talking, Lewis? Like, flipping Nora. Self-importance, any? I disagree. Sainz apparently is not locked in yet, contrary to the reports of a Spanish publication who intimated that he's already signed for a team, whether that's Williams or Sauber. Those are the two most likely outcomes for one Carlos Sainz. And my heart still bleeds for the fellow, I'll be honest with you. So G Coffee, what's going on? My day one. My heart bleeds for Carlos Sainz Jr. It's not fair. 25 points after appendicitis surgery, and now he doesn't have a job. What is that all about? I have no clue. It's just not fair. And I know that F1 is a shark's tank, but in a world where Checo Perez gets extended for 2 more years and Carlos Sainz is potentially going to end up at a James Fowles-led Williams, don't feel right. Does not feel right. Carlos Sainz says, the only thing I can tell you to date is there is nothing locked in. I've seen reports in the media, and I don't know if it's Spain, people saying that I've signed, but when you look at those things, it makes me laugh. I remember seeing reports saying that I'd signed as long ago as 3 months. Scroopy, what's going on? Mate, it's chaos, this. Lance is hard to like. He is hard to like, John. You know, he makes it difficult. I'm out here trying to give him props and praise, and he just, nah. It's not worth it. And then actually, this is the good shout. I need to mention this. Damon Hill on the F1 Nations podcast has said of Checo Perez and he's signing the 2-year contract, since we're talking about injustice and fairness being ever so slightly skewiff in Formula One. Don't forget, as far as Checo, Maximilian Verstappen even, that they've both got 2 drivers who can attack. So I'm not sure how you can say that of Checo. So Red Bull seem a little bit one-legged at the moment if they want to defend. It's a bit rude from Damon that, but here's what he means. If Maximilian Verstappen is in first, as an example, and McLaren in the hands of Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris are in second and third, what does that mean as far as the pit stops, right? That means that the McLarens, the papaya-coloured car, that they can split their strategies. One can nail the undercut, one can nail the overcut, leaving one Maximilian Verstappen in a very vulnerable position now. And that's the issue. When you have a driver who's 3/10 away of the other driver in the other car, you don't have a wingman and you are left vulnerable. This is the motorsport Rubik's Cube that Red Bull are going to have to deal with, especially as convergence is a thing in the latter stages of these rules and regulation. What's going on, Funky Carton? We're getting very techie as far as the news today, and I'm going for it. The news cycle is mad. Checo can play the off-track. See, Paul, this is what I failed to account for, and he said it there in his soundbite. Props to the fella. Go on, let's talk about this McLaren stuff very quickly, because it's gone techie, hasn't it, in IndyCar. No, I know we don't normally talk about non-F1 things, but today I have to, because I'm quite proud of this. Listen, I'm rapidly becoming a fan of McLaren. They are my second favourite, if not my first favourite team. Look at what they've done. There's an Argentinian driver in IndyCar called Canapino. He was on the receiving end of a very clumsy move from Théo Pourchaire last weekend at the Detroit Grand Prix. But the Detroit Grand Prix is just a dive bomb fest, right? Very messy. By no means the epitome of finessed driving, wheel banging, and there was dive bombs and outbraking himself. It was destruction derby settings. Théo Pourchaire made a mistake for which he ultimately got punished by the IndyCar regulators. Canapino, however, Argentinians, as far as motorsport fans, are passionate, if anything. And they went to town on Théo Pourchaire for his error, to the tune of unalive threats on social media. You guys know what I'm talking about here. It's very, very techie. How the sort of abuse that was levelled at Théo Pourchaire is unacceptable, especially when you consider that he's a young driver coming up, etc. So Canapino, being an elder statesman of IndyCar, well into his 30s, you would think would empathise with Théo Pourchaire. You would expect, if he understands anything about PR, an apology, or even trying to quell the rancor, the social abuse that was aimed at Teo Burcher, what did Canapino do? He jumped online and fanned the flames. What a clown. Then in his apology, pure gaslighting. Oh, everybody does unalive threats, but when it's Argentinian fans, only then it's bad. What are you talking about, Canapino? All we needed from you, chap, was an apology. That's all. Can see what sort of tweets you're liking, and if they are abusive, then that's not good enough. Canapino, whatever you want to be, whatever you consider yourself to be, you are a public figure. People look up to you. There are sponsors involved in this, commercial value too. And when you act so recklessly and start defending fans who have levied unalive threats at a young driver in Teo Burcher, there will be ramifications as far as your fan base is concerned and as far as your commercial value. And props to Arrow McLaren, because they've said, you know what, we had commercial partnerships with Juncos Hollinger, the team for which Canapino drives. No longer, however, McLaren have taken a stand. There is a social media policy, and he, in Canapino, has a responsibility, a duty as a driver of Juncos Hollinger to act in a responsible way when he was online. Arrow McLaren said, you know what, Arrow's McLaren, legends. We cannot, this commercial arrangement between us and you, the team for which you drive, Canapino, no longer. Sacked them off. Let's go, McLaren. Where's my McLaren cap? I'm going to go and get it. Promise soon. Jay Will Smith already delusional. It rubs off. You guys are kidding me. He's already a billionaire. Like, mate, I don't even know what to do with that Lance. I'm rooting for him. And the joke is he could go well because he's quick in the wet. Is he not? So if it's wet this weekend, expect Lance to do very well. Go on and let's talk about the Charles Leclerc stuff very quickly. Because Charles Leclerc thinks that Ferrari at some point in the near future, courtesy of Formula One Uno, a very sketchy Formula One site. But Charles Leclerc thinks potentially at some point in the very near future that Ferrari could catch/pass the balls that are red. Formula One Uno says Charles Leclerc thinks that the last three circuits have not been suited to the RB20. He expects the reigning champions to become more competitive at venues that are kinder to their 24 challenger. From Spain, says Charles Leclerc, quote, I think we will see a very strong Red Bull again, stated the Monegasque driver. However, the Scuderia has confidence in its potential after Imola and also while awaiting for the new updates currently scheduled for Silverstone. New updates. Let's go. Silverstone is only a few races away. I cannot wait. Is it not? I think it might be closer than that. Maybe 2 races. This weekend can be positive for us, says Charles Leclerc. We need to optimise for our potential to do our best, waiting for the updates that could put us ahead of Red Bull. Oh, the humanity. Is that how we're going on? Charles Leclerc, aka modern day journalist. Let me talk to him as well, because I watched him in an interview. Listen, for the longest time, I've levied a lot of criticism at Charles Leclerc, and I don't think this is time for me to apologise. A decent showing at the Monaco Grand Prix doesn't erase the ills of Christmas past. France happened a couple of years back. Imola, mistakes happened. Baku happened. Charles Leclerc still makes mistakes. And take this to the bank. Between now and the end of the season, we'll be having another conversation again about Charles Leclerc's mistakes. Mention their names, turn 12 at Las Vegas in real life and the sim race last year. He makes mistakes and he'll keep making mistakes. I don't think those gone anywhere. Does that mean that Charles Leclerc isn't the fastest driver on the grid, point to point, A to B, and will give Lewis Hamilton nightmares in qualifying at the very least next season? Absolutely not. He is that guy, super quick, reminiscent of Gilles Villeneuve, but as far as his underperformance and his unforced errors, absolutely also reminiscent of Jean Alesi. However, I think a lot of that, as far as his unforced errors, is mental. And in an interview that he gave at the Canadian Grand Prix, he said this, and I like the cut of his jib. What we're here to do, as far as performance, is focus on the processes, not the outcomes. If we dial in and tick all of the process boxes, the outcomes, he said, will look after themselves. This is Charles Leclerc talking, not Andrea Stella. What is going on? I listen. If he's got a mental coach in his life, all of a sudden, then Charles Leclerc can be a very dangerous driver. I'm telling you, dangerous in the sense of fast and potentially pose a challenge to one Maximilian Verstappen. Chaos. Kenny says everybody makes mistakes. Why do you always go to this? Name me one driver not. Go on then, Kenny. We'll talk about it since you've addressed it. Why do I always go to this? Because it's the truth, Kenny. Every driver does make mistakes, but this is a difference in extents and not kinds as far as Charles Leclerc. Of course, Maximilian Verstappen made a mistake at the Monaco Grand Prix, and he also made one at Imola in the race over that bollard. But when was the lap? We're comparing potentially the two protagonists of F1, the next breed to go forth, right? You guys tell me when the last mistake that Maximilian Verstappen made before Imola was. Oh, wait, Kenny. This is the point that I'm trying to make, right? It's the frequency with which Charles Leclerc makes those mistakes. You only need to dial it. And if you don't believe me, like I was challenged recently by a member of the Charles Fossey, you only need to dial it in on bloody YouTube. Type in Charles Leclerc's crashes and you will see exactly what I'm talking about. Paul Ricard, Las Vegas turned 12, Imola a couple of years back, Monaco each and every single year before this bloody year. Like, there are loads. He's made a lot of mistakes. That's not to say other drivers do not make mistakes. Max made mistakes also at Miami. Go on then, and before then, Kenny, you understand, do the normal distribution of Max's mistakes, and they happen a lot more infrequently than Charles Leclerc is the point that I am making. When they do happen, as far as Maximilian Verstappen's mistakes, they are very rarely of consequence. Either it's a save and he carries on. He very rarely ends up in the barrier and cannot continue. Those are the mistakes. There are difference in extent, frequency, and consequence. There we go. But I digress, because I'm going to run. Be here before qualifying. 30 minutes later on for another news video. You guys have been legends. Thank you for watching. But I digress.